All right, we've got another mini tutorial / behind the scenes video for you. And this will work nicely after the last tutorial on using keyframing, where you can change properties of an object over time, because this gives some really good examples of how to do that. Keyframing is used to help the clock fade in. It's used to move the hands on the clock. It's used for the hand going across it. So I think it'll be a good example of that, plus give you a little behind the scenes on how to do Haunted Mansion clock on your house. And while there might be lots of little pieces to make this happen, it's a relatively simple effect. And so it might be something that you could add this year in your haunt or next year. So let's look at how this effect is put together. It all starts with just the individual assets, right? The pictures and videos. And so the main part is using this 13-hour clock. I don't remember if this one came exactly from Disneyland's Haunted Mansion or if it just looks like it, but we got this nice 13-hour face of a clock that we used. There's also a few different clock hands that we kind of flipped around to see which ones we liked best, and settled on these ones. And so the whole idea of the effect is that the clock fades onto the house. This is how our show begins, and then the clock hands go in reverse order, and the minute hand's going to go at a faster cadence than the hour hand, just like a real clock would. And then after a few seconds, you get the creepy hand going across the face of it. So let's look at how this is done. We've got several different components to it. We've got the hand that goes across the clock, and we have the clock itself. I think we'll start with that, and then some other little added attributes that you can have. So if we look at the clock first, we've got the face of the clock. I'll hide some of these so you can just see that. And if I remember right, for this one to make it green, yeah, I just added a hue effect so that I could change the color to whatever I want. So that's I decided to make it green for this one. But other than that, the clock is just that. That's all we did was change the colors. And then for the hour and minute hand, we've got the hour hand going backwards, and on kind of a regular cadence, it goes 30 degrees on this 360-degree journey around the clock. So if we look at how that's done, and if you remember the keyframing information in the last YouTube, that's what's used. You see all these little hash marks. It's these hash marks that's saying when to proceed to the next hour on the clock. And so the way this is set up is we have the hour hand pointed at the 13, and then at the point that we want it to start moving, click that little stopwatch icon on the rotation properties, because we want it to rotate around the clock. And then at these hash marks, it will move. You can drop one of these dots by clicking here, and it'll say, okay, I'm going to move to that position over that amount of time. So that way you can see each of these marks that it starts to move to the next hour. Hopefully that made sense. There you can see it move. Okay. And then the minute hand is done similarly, but it's much faster, right? In fact, it's pretty much just continuous. It doesn't have those stops at each hash mark. And so this one had a much easier keyframing because there's really just 2 points. We're starting, this is the starting position for the rotation with these properties. And then it's just going to keep rotating and rotating and rotating and rotating and rotating and rotating until it gets to the value of this endpoint. Okay. So that's how the minute hand was done. And then this other clock fill was just a solid object to fill in that little spot in the middle of the clock. Okay. So that's how the clock was done. The hand, I don't think we have to spend too much time on. It was done similarly. It's hard to see here with the black background, but that's where the hand is from the image. And so it uses keyframing too, if I remember right. Yep, on a rotational thing as well to have a starting point up here where you can't actually see it on the clock, and then to have it rotate, pass over till it gets to its ending position where it's off the clock again. So that one uses keyframes too. And then we used keyframes on the opacity on the clock itself so that it would fade in. I think I did it right. Let's see if I did it on the clock. Yeah, there's the opacity one. So we started with 0 opacity, so the clock isn't showing up at all. And then at this point, it should start to change and start to fade in. You see the opacity percentage increasing until it gets to about 6-second mark. And now it's 100% on the opacity, so you can see the clock. Okay, pretty straightforward. So some simple, cool ways to use keyframing. And then probably the spotlight effect deserves its own micro tutorial. But just to give you a little glimpse, we do have a spotlight that's shining on the clock. Spotlight effect is cool. You can shine a light on it. So if it's 3D, you can cast a shadow on it. But this just gives a little extra something to the clock. And so adding the spotlight effect, you can see, if I change some of these properties, you can see what the spotlight does. So here it's shining around and we're just getting it where we want it. This first property goes left to right. This one goes up and down. And this one is how wide the cone is, I believe, for the point of interest where the light's shining. Then you can also change the angle of the light, going left to right, up and down, or how big the cone is. So here's going up and down. This could also be done with keyframing. So if you wanted to have a spotlight moving across the house, you can do that. And here's the width of the cone from a position standpoint. And then some of the properties on the light itself, you can increase the intensity. You can increase the angle of the light. This is changing the cone. The feathering. So if we had 0 feather, then you have a very sharp, distinct edge to that spotlight, or you can really feather it down to where it just blends in. Then you've got the radius, all that you can play with to get it the way you want. And then it has the cast shadows part, but I believe that only works if you have an object that has the 3D property set. So I think we'll do that in another video, but there's a little sneak peek into how you can add lighting as well to your effects. So there you go. That's pretty much it. That's how we did the Haunted Mansion inspired 13-hour clock face with spooky claw hand going across the face.